All right. So for those of you who don't know what Vivit is a user community, and it's really grown through acquisitions. So I'll let you read that. I'm going to send out these slides so everybody can have them. But essentially, Vivit is an unbiased user community. So it's all about you as people who use the MicroFocus tools or freshwater tools, or the Mercury interactive tools as they grow through acquisition. Vivit is governed by a board of directors. I recently got lucky enough to be elected on the board as well. I am not in this picture yet. We haven't had a chance to meet. There are 9 of us that meet twice a month and kind of help drive the direction of Vivit. So if you have any ideas on how we can make Vivit better, please give me feedback and I can relay that to the team. So Vivit was started in 1993, and so that makes us 25 years old. There are roughly 41,000 members as of today, and we hope that this could be a great source of information that gives you, as I said, unbiased information, uncensored, and also field tested. So really just want to include everybody that uses the tools, both from those who are practitioners, but also those who are executives and people who make decisions on how to make their organization better. Backwards, forwards. A little bit of lag. There we go. All right, so it's all about the community. We actually have 83 different local user groups, and that is local as in worldwide, so that's local within those specific regions. That spans 31 different countries. Really geared towards getting the best and the brightest and thought leaders within the industry, and helping people connect with those like-minded individuals. We also have what we call special interest groups. So these are so for example, the MicroFocus offering is huge. They have a ton of tools, ton of awesome tools. And so we decided we were going to break that down into smaller interest groups. So you have like the ADM and SIG, special interest group. You've got the ITOM special interest group, and so forth. So if you're interested in any of those, they've got SIG talks, which I'll talk about here in just a second. We also offer forums and blogs as well to help kind of drive communication for those that can't actually make it out to a local user group meeting. And there's also an e-newsletter as well. Keep going backwards. Really, we wanted to drive advocacy, and that's advocacy for you, advocacy for MicroFocus, and advocacy for Vivit. So really wanted to facilitate that two-way communication. We have surveys on the table, so those surveys, when you fill those out, I'm actually going to give those to Rafi. Rafi is the Senior Vice President of the ADM tool stack. So if you want to give him some feedback, that's exactly where you can do it. I'll give those directly to him, unfiltered. Don't put your name on it, anything like that. And then the other pillar we have is education. So it's all about these events that we have, whether it's a live event, a web event, it's sharing that product knowledge. And we even have a knowledge base that you can go into and actually glean some knowledge out of that as well. It's all about the information. And then we also recently we've included advanced training. So we did a session on Octane, for example, at the C-Star down the road. And that, the turnout for that was great. We had a lot of great conversations about the tool. It's really good for career development too. So like I said earlier, we have the best and the brightest, but as you come here, you network with people, you meet people, and who knows what that could do for your career. And then also, we've got the case studies and white papers. So if you write a white paper, let me publish it on the Vivit forums, and everybody can benefit from that. The membership is free, 100% free. It's all about you, the users, the knowledge, and helping you communicate and network with people that are in the area. Anybody who's interested in volunteering, I'm always looking for help. I'm a volunteer for the local user group here in Seattle, as well as Oregon. And then I also, the board of directors, they don't pay me either, so I volunteer there as well, in addition to my day job. And then the SIG Talks. SIG Talks are awesome. They are 12 to 15 minutes once a month, and you log into a webinar, and they talk about specific things, specific issues. I think the last one we had was talking about automation and some of the trials and tribulations folks have rolling out an automation framework. And it was like 10 minutes long. We just kind of talked about, I think mostly about the data and how essential data is and some of those strategies to help people be successful. I don't think there are any security folks in the room, but there is a cybersecurity summit September 25th and 27th. I believe it's free, but I'm sure Michael will give some more information on that maybe if you're interested. All right, with that, I don't want to take up too much time. So Scott Myers, already.
All right. Okay, I'm Scott Myers. I am a senior consultant with Bienabee Technologies. We're going to talk a little bit today about Octane, DevOps. DevOps is something I'm sure we're all familiar with. I'm not sure how mature and far along we are into the process. So today we're going to go over some slides discussing DevOps, where Octane fits into it, and we're going to demo Octane. Some people have various different levels of experience with Octane as well. It's still relatively new, so we're going to go ahead and demo that and then show how that works into your DevOps scenario. Today's economy, every organization faces. So things are going really fast out there, right? Technology is always changing. We're getting new tools, new models. There's a lot of pressure on us to get our products to market really, really quickly. That's something that every time we go to see an organization, that's on the tip of everybody's tongue. It's how are we going to get things out quickly? And something that most companies kind of struggle with a little bit, right? So people are starting to adopt things like DevOps, becoming more agile. All right, a couple of statistics. 78% of businesses surveyed said 2-month delivery was too slow, and about that same amount said 75% of they were going to adopt agile or hybrid to start to increase, and ultimately scale to more deliveries, more deployments faster and faster. So by incorporating DevOps into your ecosystem, you're going to be able to be more responsive to your business needs, more deployments, better collaboration. Those are kind of the cornerstones of the DevOps philosophy. It's more about a culture and a frame of mind than an actual tool or a set of tools. All right, so the 2017 State of DevOps report, published by DORA, I never remember what DORA stands for, DevOps reporting, something like that, have these nice, beautiful statistics, right? And I'm not sure, exactly how they came up with these, how they qualified whether your company is using DevOps philosophies correctly or not, but at any rate, those numbers are pretty eye-catching, right? It's going to make you say, wow, right off the bat. In reality, we wish we all had these very mature DevOps continuously deploying systems, right? Continuous integration. In reality, we're probably somewhere else on the map, right? So we see the waterfall teams that still are using Visual Studio, TFS, your Water Scrumfall, your Agile teams that are using Eclipse for their IDE, Perforce for their source code management system, Jenkins for their build server. Right, and the key takeaway here is that Octane can be the glue to hold, wherever you're at in your process, Octane can be the glue to hold all that together and bring visibility back to it. So these are the core modules of Octane. There's 8, and we'll discover that they were pretty particular in why they chose the modules that they chose. Right, so we're going to dive into all of these a little bit later, but really quickly, you've got requirements, which I'm going to get into later. I've got my own rant on whether requirements should be in an agile tool or not. Your backlog, which is where you're going to decide what work you're going to be doing, the actual physical work that you're going to deliver. The team backlog is where all that work is going to get executed, right? Quality, you're going to see this theme is pervasive in the DevOps and Octane process. This quality is going to be everywhere. It's what good is going really, really fast, deploying and writing all this code really fast in an agile manner if your quality starts to suffer. So you need to make sure quality is pervasive throughout the entire process. Pipelines is where we're going to dive into those external DevOps sources, our CI servers. Right? My word, dashboard is I'm sure you guys are all familiar with ALM.net, we're familiar with the dashboard and the defects module. My work is my personal favorite, and I'll get into why a little bit later. Why ALM Octane? So this kind of goes into the need for such a tool, right? What solution was Octane built for and trying to fix? We're trying to connect everybody, automate everything, right? These are core DevOps philosophies to become faster and faster. So open architecture, and there's I see a lot of change here from MicroFocus. You can see on the last bullet point, connected into the team's existing build process. And that seems to me to be quite a bit different from maybe what MicroFocus philosophy was a little bit in the past, where they were going to build their own tools to do everything, and you were going to use MicroFocus ecosystem. They're not going to reinvent the wheel. They notice now that there are so many great tools out there. Let's maximize those and incorporate those into our process rather than trying to reinvent the wheel and do everything ourselves, right? Connecting the dots. So this, I thought this was funny the first time I saw this slide. To think about how different this would look from an ALM.net if we did the same thing, where you've got requirements, test lab, test plan, test lab to your defects, right? How we've got everything incorporated from user stories to code changes to pipelines to test. And so, you can think, this kind of shows why the modules were built, why they were built the way they were. You've got your backlog, which is kind of like that book that you're writing, right? The application models is a library that book is going to fit into. And so as we start to write more books, we still have to go back and test the books that we're writing while we keep that application module, that library of everything we've already built, so we can get back to this theme again that quality is everywhere and pervasive throughout the cycle. As we touched on again, continuing to embrace open source. There are so many really, really great tools out there. Why don't we make the best of those tools rather than doing everything ourselves? So you've got the Jenkins Team City Bamboo, the CI tools that we're going to utilize direct out of the box integration with Selenium. That's kind of something new for MicroFocus, right? Integrating Selenium, you thought that would have represented, right? ChatOps, really, really cool. If you integrate ChatOps with your Octane, you can send people comments. It's going to show up right in their Slack. You know what? Our developers love to stay in their Slack and stay in their IDEs and don't want to pop out and come into Octane and all that kind of stuff. You can integrate directly with your defects, user stories, features, and epics. Swagger for open APIs. I know you have some API guys out here just completely love Swagger. Integrations. So these are day one, out-of-the-box integrations that are going to be available to you from integrated with Octane. Right? So you've got your IDEs, Visual Studio, IntelliJ, and Eclipse, the most popular IDEs out there. Source code management to your build servers. Fortify, as we're going to talk about later, right? A lot of us folks with QA backgrounds, with developer backgrounds, we kind of like to do our job and let the security people kind of do their job, right? But that doesn't really fit into this DevOps ecosystem where we want to collaborate, where we want to work together with everybody, share responsibilities, think aligned. So we need to bake security into the process itself. And the Fortify folks are going to talk about that a little bit. All right, so we've got all the different phases here. All the different tools available to us across all the different phases of the DevOps ecosystem, right? And the first thing you see is, wow, there are just so many tools, right? And I'm sure there's hundreds or thousands more, and they're all kind of do the same thing, but a little bit differently, depending on what kind of preferences you want, right? Some of these are MicroFocus tools, some of them aren't MicroFocus tools. So if you wanted to do some analysis on other tools out there, here's a good starting point to see some of the MicroFocus tools, see some tools that may do something similar. You may even have some of these tools in your organization already and don't know that they would fit inside your DevOps ecosystem, right? I mean, I'm not going to go through all the tools. You've got build tools, and Maven's really good for those people who love to configure their builds. Maven does a lot of work for you, but you can't configure it quite as much. Ravel's kind of makes the best of both worlds. But you don't have to configure your XML and Gradle like you do, like some people love to do, some people hate to do. So there's a lot of different flavors out there for you is the key point. And I'll send this out to everybody so you'll have a list of all these tools to do some comparative analysis if you'd like to. And here we have the MicroFocus tools that are available that fall into the whole DevOps realm. Right? And a lot of us are familiar with a lot of the tools here. Some of you may not have known, hey, look, there's a mobile solution that we can make right into our DevOps process. AppPulse is really great for if you're having maybe mobile applications and you want instant feedback on how your application's performing, what your customers are having trouble with before they go out there and send those bad reviews back for you. You have instant access to all the statistics there. The matrix. A couple of big takeaways from this one is, first, if you notice on the bottom, you've got ADM in blue, you've got the ITOM suite in purple, just to show you how much coverage over the DevOps process that MicroFocus has. Right? And then a little bit about the process itself. To show how everything is interconnected there is so we can ultimately get our developers and our operations people thinking more aligned, breaking down those silos and start to even share responsibilities. I've worked at a couple of companies where they're teaching their developers how to use build tools, how to use deployment tools. So it's going to make the deployment process that much faster. So this is the model office. If you have a mature, robust DevOps process, this is kind of what it's going to look like, right? MicroFocus has identified 8 modules of the process, from planning, integration, deployment, release, continuous testing, all the tools that go into those, and as well as the people that go into all these processes. Security, operations, down to collaboration and assessment. I mean, if we wanted to dig into this, this is the kind of slide that we could spend an hour just presenting how we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of all these processes and start to automate them and start to make them move more quickly. I like this. So this talks about agility, right? And how being agile is more than just implementing agile methodologies for our development, and it's more than making automated tests and deploying a little bit faster, right? It's a whole mindset, and every corporation is a little bit different. So what I like to have you guys do is think about your organization, look at these proposed timelines, and across all of the phases, look at maybe where you think your biggest bottlenecks occur. Because you can see here, deployment in development, if you cut that time in half, you're still only saving a couple days, but if you are taking 15 days here, 12 days here, that's a great place to start your DevOps journey, right? That's how you get the most bang for your buck, is taking those big bottlenecks, and let's automate those. Let's put investment into those to get those times way down. Now we're to market faster. Now we're not losing customers that have already gone to different technologies while they're waiting for us to make our releases and deployments. Okay, are you ready for DevOps? So, I mean, this, like we said, everybody's going to start their DevOps journey in a little bit different place, depending on what you've already got in place, what your biggest needs are. This is just kind of maybe an example of a roadmap that you could follow. I mean, there's several different ways you could do this. You can start with agile development, code review, continuous integrations. Move your way up to, because it's going to be a process, right? You're not going to be able to implement all of DevOps overnight, right? You're going to start to chip away at it piece by piece until we're automating and deploying everything, right? So when we go to intermediate, we'll add orchestration, more automated validations, more automated deployments. Gosh, I work with some companies that have their validation processes. It's mind-blowing. Okay, we go into advanced, so dynamic code analysis, continuous delivery, test automation. I'm assuming they're meaning like total test automation, like everything is going to be automated. Otherwise, I would put Selenium down, basic or intermediate levels. So, any questions on the deck? Going forward. All right. Okay, so now we're going to jump into Octane, and we're going to go over the modules of Octane, answer any questions you guys have. If you guys have anything that comes up, this is better if you guys add some pieces. Some of you have already worked with Octane. If you have anything to add that maybe we've missed, feel free to jump on in. So we'll start left to right first. You'll notice the UI, if you're used to, oh.
Is it not mirrored? Okay.
There we go.
Okay, so beautiful UI, right? If you're used to ALM.NET Quality Center, and this has got to be gorgeous, right? So let's start with requirements. The initial releases of Octane, actually, requirements were not included because it's built to be an agile tool, right? And requirements, there's no such thing as that. Requirements in a true agile lifecycle because you're going through your user stories and requirements that there were, and it would be found organically. They wouldn't be something that we're going to set up here. Which is quite a ways different for me because when I was learning QA, I mean, every QA class I went to was everything starts with requirements, requirements, requirements. So to not have my requirements, I can imagine a lot of people felt pretty naked without them, right? So the requirements were added back, and it also makes it easier to integrate or upgrade your projects from ALM.NET into Octane if you can match up your requirements. John Falk from MicroFocus actually had an idea about requirements that I really love. They're actually your business initiatives. They're not what we're going to build. So he gets into ways to be responsible from the business side. So why are we building this application that we're building? It's really going to be the why. So we're building this mobile app. So the demo we're going to have is Advantage Online Shopping, which is an e-commerce site, right? So we're going to look at the advantages of why we want to build an online store versus a brick and mortar store. So we want to achieve growth, and we'll get into statistics about the growth and the new customers that we're trying to reach that we weren't reaching before. And you can nest your requirements here. There we go. Talk about design initiatives, maybe advantages of online shopping versus brick and mortar shopping, but we're not getting into actual functions of our code here, right? This is high-level business stuff. And I think that makes a lot of sense to me because we're already covering all the code initiatives, all the features in our ethics inside our user stories, right? So I thought this made a lot of sense. Of course, Octane is all about enhancing facilitating collaboration across your team as well as maybe other teams. So you can send comments from just about anywhere. Send some comments here. They'll actually get those on notifications on their work. If they're integrated with Slack, you'll get those comments on your Slack channel as well. We can add tags here, and we'll do that a little bit later. Some people are going to go crazy with tags. We all know that the tag guy, right? He wants 6 tags on everything, and he wants everybody to use his tags. I would probably use them a little bit more, like to group a couple things together that I want to keep an eye on, maybe.
Are you familiar with a product called ARD? It's a requirements definition tool.
Okay, yeah.
And I was curious if how that would integrate here.
You might have heard of it as CA Agile Designer.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of it. Now, we talked about this a little bit yesterday too. Aaron, do you have any idea how that would integrate?
I'd say if there's an API, we can do anything with enough time and money.
It wasn't a technical how does it integrate. It's a conceptual.
Okay.
What do you do in each tool, and how would you use the tool together? It's more of a workflow question than a technology question.
Yeah. Has anybody seen that tool?
Well, so the way it works is you lay things out almost in a flow chart, but every possible path through there, you can assign tests to each test steps or whatever to each section, and it can tell you what test cases you should run if you're going to change something in the flow. Use that to lay out the design of your app, what decisions should happen in your app. But I think you can lay out things bigger than just an app.
Interesting.
Am I close, Jennifer, as to what you're aiming at, or no?
Well, yeah, but then it's like if we're capturing requirements here,
and we're doing that design in ARD, and then that needs to inform the tests that are here. How does
it get back and forth?
How does it get back and forth? Or what needs to get back and forth?
Right.
You know?
Right.
There's a concept of application modules, which might, maybe.
Yeah.
We'll take a look at those and see, maybe it'll raise some ideas. Yeah.
So I can really easily actually move these across the process as well. This is accepted right now, it's been accepted. We can move it in design if we wanted to. So that is the why we're building what we're building. The backlog is where we get into the what we're building. Right? So you'll see the backlog tree here. We're going to start at the high level with epics. Best practice for epics is that they're overreaching modules of our program that are going to go across multiple releases, right? We're always going to be working on billing. So we're always going to keep epic as something that we're always working on, always going to achieve. Where credit cards is a feature that we're going to try to deliver within the scope of the release. Right? And epics can be deconstructed into features, which can be sent into user stories, tasks, and all of those kind of things.
What do you see as the relationship between those requirements and these features and user stories?
Depends on how you're using your requirements. And if you're using them in more of a waterfall method, you can directly tie them in. But if you're using them in the business sense, I think it's a lot more for business visibility. Okay?
Right, but then when the business comes and says, so how are we doing on that? You want the connections in here to be able to show them that how we're doing on that,
yeah,
right?
We keep everything up together, but
yeah,
and that can be a challenge, right? If one of your initiatives is growth through, maybe through monitoring and things like that, you might be able to report back on requirements of something like growth. That's a good question.
Well, another way to look at this too is there might be some requirements that have nothing to do with the features in the app or the ethics in the app. Like I might have a requirement that all my services respond under 20 milliseconds, right? And all my pages load within 2 seconds, and all my whatever. These are non-functional requirements, but they're requirements nonetheless that we have to say, are we meeting, are we not meeting? How do you tie that in as well?
A lot of those you can kind of test, right?
well, and so then the quality module, you could use the tests in the quality module to map back to those, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But she's talking about business initiatives.
Yeah.
So it's going to be hard. You have to get really creative, right? We got epics broken down into features. Again, deconstructed into user stories, defects. Really easy to use the UI in the user stories. We can actually just open it up and we can see the tasks that have been assigned to it, created from that user story. We can see the sprint points assigned to it. If there are tests assigned to the user story, we can see how testing is going and the overall progress of the development of the user story as well. Really easy to see it. Creating the user story, we actually, can see the tasks to generate right here. So if we want to add tasks directly from the creation of our user story, we just need to separate them by a line. And they're automatically going to generate all of those tasks directly from user story creation. Absolutely. Well, it gets you thinking more agile as well. You can also switch to a grid view. There's a lot of people who like to see things in the grid view. I love this model because you can see everything that way. And I can see my tests here, my manual tests, my Gherkin tests. Right? Gherkin test out of the box integration. Super cool. That's exactly what we're talking about with DevOps, right? The ability to automate everything. Gherkin test, if you can get all of your people on the same page as far as conventions on how to write your Gherkin test, it makes them super easy to automate. You've got your parameters down here, so it'll automatically iterate Gherkin tests for each set of parameters that you have down here.
How do you link that Gherkin definition to the Cucumber file that you have in source control management that actually does the test.
You can download these directly from your IDEs.
Right,
Is
but
it a
so
copy or is it a reference?
if I download it from my IDE, then when that test gets run, I want those run results pushed back to here. And how does that whole linkage between all of that happen?
I believe it's out of the box integration. Depending on
Okay.
what tools you're using.
And when you open up the IDE, you refer to when you can set the status within Octane. And then when you open,
Oh, it's through the IDE.
Yeah,
correct,
exactly.
correct. And
Through
then
my work on it.
you open up a feature file through,
Right.
say, IntelliJ or Eclipse, and then you'll start working with the automation piece. And then you'll have your space set up, and when you run it, it will refer back to this as well. And it will show a status of both automated and manual, just in case, from a life cycle perspective, if your automation ever becomes out of date or it fails, you can always go back to your manual test as well, your Gherkin test to run that. So you can run both automated and manual tests. They're essentially the same test. It's just that evolution of that test.
Right. Right.
So
Let me think about
I
that.
guess,
I mean, the
yeah.
problem we had, when we tried to use the ALM interface into like Eclipse and IntelliJ,
Okay.
was that when you're talking about dozens, hundreds of dev teams,
Yep.
doing the mappings, I mean, it didn't scale well.
So that's a good point, and that can happen, right? Who's assigned what and what not. Within Octane, it does have the same concept where a particular workspace, which is kind of the equivalent of a project, a workspace will have a number of team members. You have them inside the tool. Then the lifecycle within there, you'll be able to assign particular people bits of work, or hey, go automate this test now, or work on this. And then when they log into their IDE, it'll say there'll be an icon, my work, anything that's been assigned to them. So from a workflow perspective, they'll be able to see what they need to work on. And then in the given, if they're working in Agile, they're working in Scrum in a given sprint, to be able to work through those efforts, and they'll be able to see that. So we've given a lot of thought around what you're describing within respect to the life cycle, making sure everybody's organized, working on the right things, very efficient, and then at the higher level, visibility to all of that.
Right, because we never were successful at driving adoption of the ALM plugins into our IDEs. The devs just was like, no,
They just left it
not
alone.
going to do that.
That's
Takes
interesting.
too long, too slow.
They would
too
rather open
cumbersome.
up IE, Internet Explorer, or they just didn't touch the defect. How did they update?
They just didn't give us the linkage we need. So,
Okay.
I mean, it was like a black hole.
Oh, I see. And
You
so
know,
that's
we never had that data, and we want that data. So,
gotcha. Is that fine?
Yeah, that's
What
one of the
IDE
goals.
are you showing here?
This is Eclipse.
Okay.
So you have
That's
your,
your work.
this is your my work. And we'll go over we'll match it up to the my work module in Octane later. But you can actually, click on a user story here. You can start work on it here, and it'll start a timer to show how much stuff has been into this work. And so this will show you exactly what you need to do throughout your day.
so is there a way to link that user story to a specific repository and branch in your source code management system, so that as check-ins, as commits, as pull requests happen, it updates that user story?
Yeah, all you have to do is put a commit message in the Eclipse, and I'm going to show you that a little bit later. You can link them directly to user stories, defects, tasks.
So again, we had problems with scaling that. You know, we've got hundreds of repos and they each have multiple branches, and scaling the mapping was really difficult for us. So at some point,
What was the challenge? Was the challenge just setting it up and or managing it as things evolve?
If we get 10 new repos created every day, understanding where those repos information should go, how do we know that? I mean, it's like just maintaining the synchronicity between the two tools. It was something that we really, to maintain it, you have to automate it. And we are struggling to understand how to automate the synchronization between the two tools.
Gotcha.
In Octane, that's really facilitated by CI servers, so you can, for example, in a pipeline that we're going to see here, we have just our master branch link, but you can asterisk that out, so any branch that's ever branched off of the master branch and then merged back in, you can automatically have those user stories, and depending on what branch it's commit to and from, it'll show the files that were changed and what branch it was sourced to on the user story in Octane. And that's all facilitated by just adding the commit message with whatever entity ID and commit pattern. I completely agree with you. The ALM.NET IDE integrations was very cumbersome. And if you wanted to actually, you had workflow in your defect process where you need to go from a certain status to another. If you wanted to enact that in the old IDEs, you'd have to actually write JavaScript to enable that. So the Octane plugins for the IDEs are much cleaner. You can see the entities much better, actually open them up and interact with them in an interface that's just like you're in Octane. So it's quite a bit more friendly for developers. And I'd say, I mean, if developers refuse to do it, I mean, it's kind of just like a process. I know that they're very stuck on the tools, but I think that's one of the great things about Octane is it makes it really, really easy for them to just use the tools that they have been. And maybe with a slight change in process, they can hopefully get that information back to the business.
Right.
Perfect. Okay. Manual tests, which we are our Gherkin test, our manual test. Super, super easy. As a QA, I like this a lot. Super easy to open up a test, add my steps directly from here, and just add a hyphen, and I can add a new step to the test. I can add my validation steps right here, and then my call the steps. I can see my test runs right here as well. Over here, we get into our planning bucket. So we see our 3 releases, 1.0, 1.5. We can actually take tests and tasks and drop them directly into the releases if we want to rescope them. Here we see our release timeline. So you can see we've got 9 days left in our release. We've only got a small portion of green here, which means as far as long as we are in our release, we're in a little bit of trouble. So we've got 248 sprint points done. It shows how much we have remaining, how far over plan we are. We can also see these at a team level as well. Remaining work and overtime work at the team level. You can click on a task here, and if we wanted to see an overall preview from a high level of the task. Oh, I got two highlighted. I can see it from a high level, and I can move the test along in the process. We also have the ability to see our release timeline. So it's going to show us where our sprints are, where today is, and you can also add milestones to these in the administration level. So it says I've got an integration team demo. So if you've got demos set up, you may have meet with stakeholders. You can throw these directly onto your timeline, so it gives you great visibility.
I think she had the sound.
So we've got the why we're building what we're building. The backlog is the what we're building. The team backlog is we're going to get into the actual execution, the delivery of that why, and the delivery of the what. So this is where you're going to see your storyboard, your Kanban boards. This is where you're going to manage user stories at the team level. Really easy to do your sorts and your group buys here. Super easy to drag and drop. We're not gonna have stickies all over the place, right? We can just drop it right into testing into the next phase. I'm going to show you there. This is the user story that I've been working on. So you can see all the different commits that we've committed to this user story. Exactly what files have been changing as well, so you can see visibility on those. Beautiful UI, I really like the way. You can change colors, you can look at things into a view. Once we have our sprint and our team chosen, we want to see we can actually do the retrospective close right here. So we can see in our scope change report where we're doing with all the planned work. We've got 3 items finished, 17 we still need to finish. Any unplanned work, any work that might have been added mid-sprint, things we may have had to descope for various reasons, or maybe split across different sprints. We'll have visibility on all of those right here. And again, the notes from our retrospective meeting, we're handling those agile processes and we're doing our retrospective meetings correctly. We have what we need to improve, what went well from the sprint. We can enter those right here, keep visibility on them. Incomplete items. Unfortunately, the best laid plans don't always come to fruition, right? We're going to end up, some people haven't quite mastered how much they're going to be able to bite off over the course of the sprints. We're going to have a couple of items left over. We don't want to lose visibility on those, so we can assign those into future sprints. We can just throw those back in the backlog to be worked on later as well.
Can you split them?
You can split them.
So if I wanted to know, based on those incomplete items, which features are complete and I can go ahead and release those versus which ones are incomplete and I can't release those, can I do that?
So, those will be broken down by application module. I think it would be the best place to take a look at those. These are going to be the actual functional components of the code that we're going to deliver. And you can, so actually, what I would do is I would use the group by on my Kanban board and group everything by whatever you want to group by, and you can see exactly where they're at in the process. Group by whatever you want to group by here. Okay, so after we've delivered our code, we've written our tests, we've executed our tests, jump over into the quality module, and again, we'll see that quality is everywhere, and it's a pervasive theme. So,
What's the relationship between the tests over in the backlog module and the tests here in the quality module?
It's just a different way to link them together and look at them. It's just a different way to group them. We're grouping them by actual module here.
So if I define a test over in backlog, it's visible in quality?
Yeah, so we can actually see, let me see if I just have some filters on here. So we can see all of our tests here, right? We can see our manual and we can see our automated tests. Depending on how you filter them, any way you want to filter them. So you want to see your automated tests. And these are going to be the tests that are going to come to us from those external CI sources, our UFT tests, our Selenium tests. We can integrate load and performance tests from Stormwater load. We can integrate our Fortify security test here, and we'll hear about that in a little while. That'll give us a good holistic view of the entire scope of the quality of the application that we're sending out, and break it down however we want to.
You can think of the quality module as also, I've heard it described as a snapshot of the application that you're building, and you start associating tests, requirements, or user stories, or whatever it is that you're working on in a given effort. You start associating that to particular areas of your application or the system that you're developing. And then over time, you're able to see the health or the quality of your application, your system over time, from the respect of user stories, health of those user stories, coverage, tests, automated, manual, security, all of these different entities that are covering your application areas. And that's providing visibility.
And can I look at the results by build?
If you go into the pipeline, you can.
Okay.
We're going to find it in a second. So again, going from left to right, the next module we're going to come to is pipeline. This is where we're going to introduce all those external CI sources, right? This pipeline is a Jenkins build, so these could be source code, these could be automated tests, right? A lot of great actionable metrics here about what failed, why it failed. We can see who committed to this particular build. We can see, and there's actually an algorithm inside Octane to try to predict whose code may have broken the build. Right? So we're seeing these little lightning strikes here, and people are in big trouble. And this will show us here pass test runs, failed test runs as well per build. And so if I want to see a little bit more about why one of the builds failed, I can do some failure analysis here. And this will get me into my failed test runs. And I can look at this. It looks like there's 4 test suites that are giving me errors. I can actually see the stack trace directly from the tool that I'm using, directly from my Selenium test. I can see those right here in the report. I can see who committed to that build. If Jason's doing some research and he thinks his code may have been the one that broke the build based on the stack trace, he can actually just click on I'm on it right here, and that will alert everybody else, hey, you guys want to do a lot of research and digging into this. I've already done the research and found it, and I'm going to work on it and hopefully get that clean build. I can see all the commits of the build here and see exactly which files in the source code repository were changed. So really great visibility to help you not only find why something or what broke, but why something broke as well. And then hopefully we can start to become predictive with these. If we know what kind of issues we're facing, we're going to hopefully be able to start to prevent those in the future.
It's really great that it's all in one spot too, right? So you don't have to go out to another place to find it and type in another password and all that.
And if you just want like a quick summary, how fast you're going. It's a little bit slow here today. You can get just a quick snapshot as well of the health of your builds. This particular pipeline has 4 builds. And we'll come back and we'll play around with that a little bit later and show you guys how some of that works. A couple of other things I wanted to show you. Each different module actually has its own overview page, so you're going to get actionable metrics on each phase on each module that you can click on and break into. A dashboard, all of our beautiful, pretty pictures here. There's 34 different widgets I can choose from right now. You can set different criteria on these, and these are all actionable metrics as well. They're not just information. So I set quality by application module, as you were asking before, something that you might want to see. I've made criteria here where if any test has failed more than 40% of the time, it's going to show me in the heat map that it's going to be red and it's going to need some attention. And we can break into that and actually look at those runs right here. Defects. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on defects. We've all seen the defect module before, right? Not a whole lot of magic in here. Really easy to open and get into what's happening with the defect. But I want to jump into my favorite module. The My Work module. I don't know if Chris and Lewis, you guys remember this, but the first couple of weeks I was working for you guys, we were sitting up in our office in Bellevue. And I said, you know what would be super awesome is if I had a My Day feature. Because I'm so sick as a developer or as a QA of having to search through an entire system to try to find out what tasks are assigned to me, where the new comments have come from. I spend so much time researching that I don't know what to do when I get in the first thing in the morning, right? So now I've got all of my tasks that have been assigned to me are right in one spot right here. It saves you so much time to research that, you know, the developers don't want to have to search through a whole system to see what's been updated since the last time they did work. And QA people don't want to see if the developer came and put a comment overnight. If somebody sends you a comment, it's going to show up right here on your screen. So you're going to be able to get that comment directly every time you log in. You're going to get notifications here of what you've got. Here's my comments, and these requirements been assigned to me as well. And so, I've already shown you guys a sneak peek of the My Work module inside Eclipse. But you're actually going to get a mirror of this with the plugin for Eclipse, the Octane plugin, in your IDE itself. So, let's see, where's my user story? As a user, I can add items to my shopping cart. Right? So I'm working on the product page here. I'm going to jump into developer land again. I'm going to do a mock change here. I'm just going to delete the ID of this div. Go ahead and save that. So we're going to see a little bit of that DevOps pipeline in action. So we've got a pipeline set up that's going to pull the source code repository. So I'm going to push this through Git. I've got a pull set up in the source code repository. That any time that there's a new commit, it's going to automatically pull that code into our QA environment. It's going to run an automated test suite against that code and give me the results back in my pipeline. And that's done through Jenkins, which we'll use it. And also TeamCity and Bienabee out of the box integration. So we've gone ahead and we've made a commit here. We'll stage it. And again, all I need to do here is user story 29221, and it's going to automatically link this commit back to the user story. And AOM Moxie, you can also use defects with tasks. Well, what do we do? I'm going to push this here. Okay, and I should have started the job. There we go. So now we should be able to jump over to Jenkins. Our internal CI server. We should start to see these jobs are going to kick off here. I'm a little worried about doing speed today. There we go. We can see that the AOS web server pull starting to run, and the AOS web server pull. Let's go ahead and open that up. There we can see it starting to build. We can actually look. So this is the code going to Git, and implementing, doing a pull there to pull this into our QA environment. And this is finished with success. So we can jump into, this is going to actually kick off the process of, there's really great out-of-the-box integration with UFT with Octane, so really easy to set up. I've actually got these UFT tests on my local file system, and it's going to run those in the background. We can take a look at it right now if you want to.
They're on your file system, but they're being managed in Git, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so this ran my UFT test, and I got success. So it's going to take a couple of minutes for this to get back into my pipeline in Octane. You can see that the build process is working here. Show you a little bit about some of the out-of-box Jenkins integration here. So this is configuring a Jenkins job, building a new job in Jenkins. It's taking a look at our Bitbucket account and seeing if our circle repository, seeing if encode is received. It's going to pull and trigger the UFT tests, whatever UFT tests are in this folder. And it's going to send, after the build, it's going to send these reports back into Octane.
How does it associate the results with the specific tests in Octane?
It's actually going to create new ones if they haven't existed yet. You can link them up as well.
So if I run the same automated test suite for each build, I want to see results for the same test.
If you store your tests in a Git repository, Octane will automatically, and you have that configured on your system, Octane will automatically find those tests, find any updates to them.
What is that configuration? How does that happen?
So if you're using Jenkins, for example, you create a connection to your Git repository that has your UFT tests.
Right.
And then in Octane, in the administration module, there's a testing tools link.
Mm-hmm.
And you paste in a URL for that Git repository that has all your automated scenarios. And then Octane will automatically go out and find any new tests that have been committed to that Git repository, automatically find all of those, and then bundle them into like a test suite. Think of like ALM.NET Test Lab. You can configure a pipeline to manually run those, or have them, as demonstrated here, executed as part of your automated building process as well. And then the results will automatically aggregate onto that entity or that test in Octane. The pipeline is what determines, what release you're working on, what, and then of course, what features you have that we can do, all that will be automatically aggregated as well.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Very good. So I can actually see the test that came back from the build. Take a look at the runs.
Is there an assumption about what technology platform is used for development, like Microsoft, SAP, or mainframes? Does it matter?
They'll have different, each one will have its own plugins, its own integration.
Can you go Octane?
So it supports IntelliJ, Eclipse, Visual Studio for CI servers and Team City, Jenkins out of the box. There's other integrations built, but those were day one out of the box. And they all connect a little bit differently. They're pretty similar.
I believe there's a CI server SDK also, kind of some of the functionality pre-bundled if you have your own homegrown CI build process that you made, you can integrate Octane with it. It's a pretty good REST API.
Yeah, that REST API, like compared to ALM versus what we have access to here with the REST API, it's superb. It's just phenomenal. And very well documented too.
I think the question I'm trying to solve is, so we have VSTS and we do some of this functionality for CI/CD and Scrum boards and all of that. So you have source code check-in, you have build management, you have Scrum board, and you have integration with project server, which gives you the data. So it's fully integrated suite with test management in place. So this is like way ahead of what the ALM is. Okay. But still there are a few components which are not starting with VSTS. It's not a like-to-like comparison. So I'm trying to understand what's the business case in propagating Octane over VSTS in current context. So,
You can do license sharing with your quality center instance. You wouldn't have the full-blown features and functionality of the enterprise level of Octane, but you already own it today.
Integration with automation testing tools too. VSTS, you can use coded UI, so if you're developing specifically a .NET application that has a GUI, then you're good to go. But if you wanted to do a web test with Selenium, or you want to do UFT SFP testing, you're all about code and getting that deployed. So there's a lot of additional capabilities around test automation that enables as well.
And right now, the integration that you have with VSTS and UFT, I believe it's being kicked off by a build task, and then anytime those tests fail, your entire build fails. Here with this solution, it actually gives you a warning. So you actually get credit for that build being successful, and then you get dinged for the test not passing. It's a little tighter integration there.
You can see we can link back to our beautiful HTML reports that we're normal accustomed to seeing in UFT. Those will come directly into the test inside the test run. All right, I think that's all I've got for Octane. Do you guys have any questions on it before we get into some best practices? Okay, best practices. I'm going to send this out here, so you'll have it. My work view. I can't tell you guys how much I work. In the backlog, adding Graph 2 to overview tab, and you can add images and attachments throughout the entire process. I could hit on this. I mean, it's very hard to, as you can see, do a half hour on Octane. I mean, you could have gone for who knows how long. Story and task boards are awesome, especially using stickies on a whiteboard previously.
That was my contribution.
My first job as a QA was over at Microsoft, and my second day, they ran out of stickies in the supply room. So that was supply room there, so I was tasked with tracking down somebody that could find me stickies. Okay, if there's not any questions, we will turn this over to our friends at Fortify and learn about DevSecOps.
Carl, do you have the link to Ready? Test. Okay, great.
Okay. Oops. All right, so thank you for everybody for coming today. Thanks, Scott, for.
Can you switch monitors? Right now we're looking at your notes and.
Okay. Let's put this here.
If you go back into that mode, it should be a button. I'll swap screens.
Well, then we have this.
On GoToMeeting, then let's do it there.
Gotta do the same. Yeah, that's this one. Okay.
And
All right, is that working on the GoToMeeting?
I'll give it a second. Perfect.
Okay, awesome.
Oh wait, no.
Okay.
It's fine.
Which one is it showing the notes?
It's showing the notes, yeah.
All right. Yeah, maybe I can get rid of the notes. Duplicate slideshow. There we go. This should work. Good.
A little bit of lag.
Yeah.
There we go. That is perfect.
All right. So thanks everybody for coming. Thanks Scott for your presentation as well. So today, first off, I'm Carl. I am a Fortify SE specifically for the Pacific Northwest region. I've also got with me my colleague Reza today. He'll be available as well after the talk. So today I'm going to talk about how to secure your code, or more importantly, how you can secure your code when we talk about a DevOps style environment. Quite often with DevOps, there's quite a few challenges that arise just on its own. And then when you try to throw security into that mix, that can cause some special concerns that that we'll go over, as well as how to overcome those challenges. So today I'm going to go over just a couple of items here. I'll try and keep it short so that we can get to the happy hour / socializing part. But I'm going to go over the security landscape today. I'm going to go over some of the challenges that application security has, especially again when we talk about working in a DevOps style environment. Then I'm going to talk about the way forward, or how we can overcome some of those challenges. I'll briefly discuss some of the Fortify offerings. We actually have quite a few offerings in our portfolio, so I'll go over that briefly. And then I'm going to show you guys a couple of the products that I think you guys are going to like, some of our tools like Security Assistant, and then I'm going to show you the Fortify On Demand tool. I'll show you our static offering and our dynamic offering. And then lastly, we'll have some extra time for Q&A, but also feel free to ask as we go along. Okay? All right, so the landscape today. So as I'm sure you guys are aware, the life of an app developer today is quite different than it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So it used to be you were in charge of maybe a couple of applications, you had quarterly releases. That is no longer the case. So in the last year alone, MicroFocus had found that there was a 30-time higher release frequency just from 2016 to 2017. So app developers are responsible for a much larger portfolio of applications, and those applications are undergoing a lot more releases. They have a much higher release frequency than ever before. So what this means for security is if any of these applications have a vulnerability, those vulnerabilities are getting released to the wild 10 times faster than they were previously. So what is the result of this? MicroFocus, again, in 2017, we did our study. We had found that of those organizations that we polled who were using our tools, 80% of those applications that were scanned had at least one critical or high vulnerability. Either of those are not good. So the way that those are kind of determined, it comes down to two factors, neither of which you want your application to have. So one is how easy it is for an attacker to exploit those vulnerabilities. And then the second is, if it were to be exploited, how much damage is that going to do? So if it's high on those, it puts it in the critical or the high category. So definitely not something you want. These findings were backed up by the Department of Homeland Security's own findings. They found that 90% of breaches were somewhere in the code, were due to either a flaw or a defect in the code or the software. Now, Verizon had found very similar. Verizon's is a little bit different. So they took data from all of the publicly announced breaches, regardless of industry. So it used to be you had to worry about AppSec if you were a financial institution. Nowadays, everybody has to worry about this. So regardless of industry, so education was hit pretty hard the last couple of years. Retail, financial, entertainment, you name it, they're all vulnerable. Verizon had found that, again, the highest breach area here was web applications, which, again, Fortify can help with. So despite all of the increase in attack surface here, the uptick in attacks on web applications, what is being done to kind of mitigate this? The answer is, unfortunately, not a whole lot. So on the screen here, you'll see security spending over the last couple of years, as well as projected for up to 2020. While security spending is on the uptick, it's on the uprise, we do see that application security, that's actually the second bar here, this tiny little sliver. So application security is quite out of sync with how many vulnerabilities are being, or how many breaches are happening at the application layer, with actually less than 1% of spending going to application security. So why is this? So most of these organizations know this is important. They've seen the data, but a lot of them aren't doing a whole lot. And why is that? What are some of the challenges that prevent them from implementing a successful AppSec program? Really, it kind of comes down to three main things. So the first is complexity of code. So again, these developer teams, these application teams, they're responsible for a large number of applications. These could be coming from things like legacy software. So if you're running it, you have a legacy within COBOL or something like that, that can be difficult to keep up with alone. And then you throw security into the mix, that makes it even harder. These could be from in-house developments, custom code. We see a huge uptick in open source components, and that was a recent breach as well. I'm sure you guys are aware. We also see quite a few outsourced apps. We see commercial, off-the-shelf, you name it. In order to keep up with the demand, people are taking these apps from every corner. So that can be difficult enough as it is. So then you try to throw security in and trying to standardize anything, and that can pose a real challenge for organizations. The second big challenge that we see a lot is change. So you see on the screen here, this is kind of how it used to be, waterfall style. It still is for quite a few organizations or even parts of organizations. But as we've kind of talked about before, DevOps is quickly becoming the preferred method for application development as well as delivery. This is great for things like increased speed, faster to market, new functionalities can get out quicker. But a lot of times, security kind of gets left out of the mix here. People aren't really sure where to put it. They're trying to break down the walls between dev and ops. So they don't want to add an extra wall for security while they're doing that. When we had done our poll, we found that only 20% of developers in DevOps style environments were doing anything beyond some manual code checks, and then occasionally the security team would do a pen test here and there, which is not sufficient. And then the last, the third biggest challenge that we see is scale. So again, if your teams are responsible for a large number of apps and releases, more than likely you're going to be hiring new developers at a fairly quick rate. But a lot of times they don't do the same with the security team. So your security team, what we found is it's tilted there at a rate of 80 to 1. where for every 80 developers, they have one security person. So it really causes a bottleneck in the security department. A lot of times they're overwhelmed. They can do, again, they'll do things like pen testing, but they can't get to each and every app, each and every release that the developers are doing. It's just too much for them. So how do we overcome some of those challenges? They're not easy. Really, it's going to come down to these three pieces. First one would be integration. So we want to make sure that these tools, these AppSec tools, are available not just to your security team. Again, it's an 80-to-1 ratio, so these need to be available for developers as well. So this means things like embedding these into tools you guys are already using. So again, we have plugins for a number of IDEs. So we have tools that will run alongside your other tools to check code as developers are writing it for vulnerabilities. We've got things like kicking off scans through your IDEs, through your build tools, your CI/CD tools. We have integrations into all of those as well. Another part here that's important is to start early in the SDLC. So this is the same thing with ADM. So you guys are already starting early for things like functional testing. It's important to do this with AppSec as well. The earlier on you can start, the more you can catch early, the better your return on investment. It's a lot easier to fix your own code than it would be to fix somebody else's, especially if you just wrote it. If you can catch it while you're writing it, even better. The second main piece here is automation. So again, just like in ADM, you guys are already probably automating quite a bit, or trying to. So if you're trying to do things like automate your regression tests, same thing here for security. So we can do this through scripts, we can do this through, on the source scan part, we can do this through your builds as a post-build option. We can even have it set up to be gated, so when policies that you predefine, the app doesn't fit those, we can have it fail to build. There's a whole lot you can do there to kind of set it and forget it, and make your life easier as well as everybody's. Okay.
What languages, when you do the integration, you do like the code scans or whatever, at the time I'm writing it, what languages do you use?
So currently, that's our tool called Security Assistant. I'll actually show that as my first part of the demo. So that one is currently available for Java and .NET. But they are opening it to others. It's a very popular tool.
You can do like Python and JavaScript and that kind of stuff.
Definitely. The next phase, they're going to expand it to a couple more IDEs for those two languages because that's the easiest step because they already have the rules for it. And then after that, they're going to expand those two. Depending on what they see in the market, they'll expand to other languages. Because that's honestly that's one of our most interest gathering tools right now. A lot of people really like that. It's very easy to use. And even though it's not, I don't want to get too in the weeds, it doesn't do everything a full source scan would do, but it does knock down quite a few vulnerabilities right off the get-go, which is pretty awesome.
So if you're using SonarQube already, you would use this in addition to SonarQube.
SonarQube is...
Does it replace SonarQube?
No, so SonarQube is different. So SonarQube is more for code quality. They do some overlap. So just like Fortify, we do have some overlap with code quality, but our primary focus is security. SonarQube's primary focus is code quality.
Yeah.
They do a little bit of security, but we actually even have integrations with SonarQube. So I've worked with organizations where they'll run their sonar and then have Fortify tack on after that.
Right, because Sonar runs at build time, and so that's an easy.
Exactly. If you're already using it,
integration.
it's pretty simple. Now, our tool doesn't have to run at build time. Most people do. It's the easiest way to do it.
Right.
But we have other ways to do it as well. So automation is very important here as well. Even back to Octane. So if you want to track your security defects throughout the SDLC, we can have that sent automatically to Octane as well, or a number of other tools. And I'll get more on that in a bit here. But I think the most important piece here is agility. Quite often when organizations come to us, they'll say, I really want to do security, but is this going to slow me down? Do I have to delay any deadlines? Am I going to have to put off a new functionality in order to make these apps secure? The answer is, doesn't have to. So again, We do want to provide your results as quick as possible. That is a big piece of it, but not just providing the results as quickly as possible. More importantly, I think, is providing actionable items. So we want to make sure that the findings that you do find are actionable. So that means things like reducing false positives. You don't want your developers to see these and think, the security team cried wolf, I'm just going to ignore these. We also want to make sure that the vulnerabilities that we do send to them, they can take a look at that and it'll be relevant to their knowledge base. They'll be able to see things like best fix locations, exact line of code that was affected, so that they can quickly go in, fix what they need to fix, and then move on with their day.
To tell them why it's a risk, like, so
We do.
not just like line 47 is
Yeah.
has a security flaw, and you're like, well, I don't know why.
So we'll usually we'll point out for the static piece, the source scan. We'll point out the line of code that's affected, so we'll say the source and the sink there. We'll also say things like we even provide videos that they can watch and hands-on training that they can do. I'll show all that when I get into the demo itself. Yeah, we provide why it was flagged, even with the real-time checker that's provided, and then recommendations on how to remediate that.
So you have white box testing of security and black box as
We
well?
do both. And then we actually even have gray box, so we have IRS, and we have a tool for runtime protection as well. So I think in a couple of slides here, I've got my portfolio suite, and I'll go over our whole suite at a brief level.
So I have to ask.
Yeah.
It seems like the first time you run a static analysis on code, you're gonna hit lots of problems.
We do.
And you talked about the critical and high being
Yes.
based on the severity of the vulnerability and then the opportunity for the
Yes.
vulnerability. Can you guys evaluate what the opportunity for the vulnerability?
Well, there's two different scores. So each criticality is kind of comprised of, there's a whole lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, but what it kind of boils down to a lot of times is they take a bunch of, including our own R&D as well as a number of compliances, kind of meld that all together to find out which of these vulnerabilities are easiest to breach. Like if it's something that's particularly difficult to access for an attacker, that's going to be lower on the priority list.
Right, but don't you have to see like a bigger picture of how the code works together to be
Yeah.
able to?
So that's why it's usually done at build. So we'll do
Okay.
things like the dependencies as well will be included in there, so they can do things like control flows.
So how do the microservices affect that?
Microservices are a strange breed. So that is that's a completely that is different. That is a challenge for everybody.
Yes.
Yeah. So microservices, again, if you can do, this is where it's nice to have flexibility as far as deployment options, because then you can do things like scan microservices by themselves while you're working on it. Again, this is where the IDE plugins come in handy, because a developer could go on lunch break, scan, have their results back just on their portion, just that microservice. But then you can also do like a full like the full package app as well, post build or whatever. And then we've also got our dynamics and our black box style testing that tests the running app as well. So it's kind of a different deployment and strategy, but it's definitely doable as well. So back to Scott's Octane piece with the build test track that you guys work with on Octane. Same thing with Fortify. So again, if you guys are already doing quality tests, it's not that much extra work to add security into this. So again, that could be the IDE plugin that's checking, works alongside your code quality checkers within the IDEs, just security instead of code quality. Same thing with automatically running your static scans on build, can really quickly get you your results so you can start remediation. Testing continuously. Again, if you're doing a regression test, we can do this as scripts, especially on the black box style tests. And then we can also send these back to Octane, like I mentioned before. And same thing with tracking. Specifically with Octane, we have closed loop management. So that's something fairly new. We have bug state management with this. So if you are working with 4 to 5 security teams looking at that, developers are using Octane. If they close out one or change something in Octane, it's closed loop. So it'll go back and forth between the two solutions. All right, so now that I've mentioned all of those things, let me talk quickly about some of the offerings that Fortify has. We do have a couple of different products. So starting as far left as you can, as early on as you can, again, we have our security assistant piece that is checking the code as they write it, like I mentioned. And we're definitely expanding that to more languages, more IDs, etc. That's a great way to cut out quite a few vulnerabilities right at the get-go before you even do check-ins. That's a great way to start. Now we also have our SCA piece, or static code analyzer. This is going to be actually scanning the source code for defects. We can also do binary or bytecode, but source will get you more comprehensive results if you can do that. Okay. And again, this is going to be very developer-centric. This is going to give them remediation advice that's specific to them, things like the lines of code that are vulnerable, all that good information. Now, further down the pipe, we have our black box style testing, our dynamic scanners. This is used for a number of different things. So one, you can use it to verify your findings on the source side. You can also use this for, if you scan the code, there might be issues that you find just in the code. If you scan the live running app, you might be able to find things that you wouldn't necessarily find in the code, things like configuration issues or vulnerabilities that are specific while it's running. Usually this is done in pre-prod. This is also a good tool for certain applications. So like, let's say this is a commercial off-the-shelf app. You don't have access to the source to scan necessarily. You can run it against this and get your results there too. And then finally, we have our App Defender tool. So this one is more on the ops side of DevSecOps. This is kind of its own separate tool here. What this does is this actually sits on the application server, and then in real time it's going to monitor, and then depending on how you have it configured, it will also protect the application. So this is going to look at the incoming web traffic, and it's going to make decisions based on that, as well as the vulnerabilities that it's aware of. So you can send your results from like the dynamic scanner to our App Defender piece to protect it. It'll make decisions on whether or not it should allow that traffic to continue or not, or block it, depending on how you have it configured.
Does App Defender sit like in front of your load balancer or just behind your load balancer then, or like where do you?
The agent it's an agent that gets loaded into your application.
Yes.
So okay, so it's built into the app that you deploy.
Yes.
Okay. The app essentially protects itself. Is it looking for like traffic patterns that are unusual, or?
Plus the results, if you did these previous scans with the dynamic scanner, you can send that way too, to protect what you are already aware of. Now, everything you see here, I would just quickly mention, we do offer as on-premise. So really, with the on-premise tools, the organizations kind of have the freedom to do what they want with it. There's a lot of different models they can go with. It's pretty flexible that way. But we also offer it as a SaaS solution, and that's sort of a different can there. Our SaaS solution is called Fortify on Demand. That's what I'm showing you today. It's kind of our easy button approach. A lot of times, especially organizations, that don't really know where to start with security, this is a great first foot in the water. We do a lot of the heavy lifting, so our security team does everything from configuring the scans, we run the scans, we clean those up for you so that you don't have false positives. So developers can really just go in and focus on what they need to do. So how does that look in a more DevOps or DevSecOps visualization? Again, the real-time scanner is kind of the create part here. We've got our SCA tool, hopefully hooked into your build processes or other tools. Then later on down the pipeline, we're verifying with our dynamic scanner. And then the real-time solution is kind of over here on the ops side here. All right. So before I get into the demo itself, real quickly, why Fortify? So there are a number of different application security providers out there, but Fortify kind of stands out for a number of reasons. So Fortify has actually been the Gartner Magic Quadrant leader since the very first Magic Quadrant. So not just in the Leaders Quadrant, but the top since 2009. So almost a decade now we've been the top provider there. And really the reason for this kind of comes down to a number of things. So things like 30 times faster to market on our customers do see. Things like 10 times faster remediation. Again, that comes down to providing results that the developers are familiar with, that they can take a look at and fix quickly. And then 2 times more vulnerabilities is important as well. So we're catching more relevant vulnerabilities as well. So some of our big names here, just real quickly, we do cover, because of these benefits, we cover things like 10 out of 10 of the largest IT companies, 90% of the largest banks, 4 to 5 largest pharmaceuticals, etc. So a lot of big names are already incorporating Fortify into their processes, however that is. So some of them DevOps, some of them not, some of them partially DevOps, and they're finding some pretty good use out of this as well. Any questions before I go into the demo piece? Okay. All right, so demo agenda. Again, I'll go over the security assistant piece. That's the IDE plugin. Then I'll show you guys source scanning with FOD. Then I'll show you a dynamic scan real quick, and then we'll have Q&A, and then social hour. Okay, let's see. So the real-time analysis piece is through the IDEs. So currently, like I said, oh, can they not see?
There we go. Wait,
just lagged?
I think it's just lagging.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, we're good.
Okay. So this is through the IDEs, like I had mentioned before. When a developer is in here coding, in real time, this is going to highlight the snippets of code that are vulnerable. So in this case, I just finished this line here. If I highlight over that, it's going to show me the Fortify criticality. Again, if you remember critical, high, medium, low, etc. This is a medium criticality here. This finds that this is a weak hash. So they can see this. It flagged it for them. It's kind of vibrant. They'll notice it. They'll be able to click on that. It's going to go down here into an explanation of why that was flagged. So in this case, they're not quite liking the iteration count here. They think it's too low. And then the recommendation here says that should be at least 1,000, as high as 10, or what was it, 10 million for critical keys. So if they were to fix that, if they were to change that, let's see if that's enough, that vulnerability would go away, right? And this is great. Again, they can fix things. Not everything. This doesn't scan for everything. It's intra-class only. And it doesn't do all of the categories that the full static scan would do. Not yet anyway. But this is great for, an added piece of security before they even check it in. And this is also something that we include with our static scans. So whether you guys are using our cloud offering or our on-premise offering, this comes with it, as well as all the other tools I'm showing.
Are we able to configure the threshold on things like that?
On this piece, I'm not sure. You can definitely configure which tools you'd like, or sorry, which, you can configure which checks you're looking for. So if something is like flagging for a category that's not important for you or something like that, you can turn that off, but not so much like a threshold percentage.
Okay.
Do you guys have kind of like a best practices doc or something that you would hand to a new developer joining your team that says, these are the kind of vulnerabilities we don't want in our code, and
yes,
and if we put them in, this will flag them? Or,
yeah. So I will, can you grab them a card and then we'll, sure. Or if you have a card, we'll swap after, and I'll try and get through. But definitely.
So are those best practices docs by platform? Like for Microsoft technologies?
I think they're more agnostic, but yes, we do have materials for that.
The licensing conversation is offline thing?
Sorry?
Are you going to talk about licensing?
Yeah, we can talk about licensing later. Or we could do it after. I'll be here for the happy hour social as well. And it kind of depends. So this is, like I said, this is included regardless, this piece. So whether you do the cloud or on-premise, whatever license model you go with, this will be But as far as like the static scans and stuff, there's a whole array of licenses. Okay. Now we also have this for Visual Studio. Again, this part just came out not that long ago. Next on the list is IntelliJ, and then once they have that, they're going to move to more languages, etc. So it looks fairly similar. They kind of kept more in line with Microsoft's visual here. So like when you do view it, it'll be it'll highlight it a little bit less in your face, a little bit less vibrant than Eclipse. Due to the feedback that we had, they had a whole bunch of different developers for .NET, and they prefer this style. So, but same sort of thing. You can still see all the same information as you would on the Eclipse version for .NET as well. Now, when we're talking about doing static scans or source scans, there's a number of ways you can do this. So we do have organizations that kind of put this in the hands of developers. Again, that 80-to-1 can be daunting. So if developers are doing this and they'd like ad hoc scans, not through their build processes, they could do that straight through the IDE. We have things like command line utilities, etc. So they can either, if they're using the cloud service, we have a plugin for that, so they can automatically package that and scan that, or the on-premise solution as well. They can even remediate within their IDEs. So you can see here, this is the scan that I have run. You'll be able to see the various findings, as well as a lot of the information. I won't go too in depth here because I'd rather show it on the portal. It's a little more flashy, it's got some more features, but they can see the important stuff through their IDE as well here. Now, again, there are many ways you can kick off your scans. Quite often we see these through builds. So, for example, you could have this as a post-build option if you're using the on-premise tool to kick off those scans. You can even have this set up to failure build, depending on what policy you want. So if you say it's absolutely unacceptable to have more than 5 critical vulnerabilities or 2 SQL injections or whatever you guys want, you can have the build fail based on that. We also can work this in for our SaaS solution through the APIs as well.
And you can configure those thresholds right in the Jenkins job, so it can be different for each build? You
can do it for the Jenkins job. I think it is handled through the actual portal here, but you can do different for different builds, yes.
Okay.
So it logged me out, so bear with me a second. All right. So everything so this is the SaaS solution where we house our static offering and our dynamic offering. So our Fortify on Demand customers would see something like this. Everything is role-based. So maybe not everybody would see this, but if you do have full access, you can silo things to like you can have certain teams only be able to view their own apps, only have access to certain features. If you only want people running scans and reports, you can do that. It's all completely customizable. But if you do have full access, you can see something like this. It's going to list all of your applications in one place. You'll be able to see a breakdown of the vulnerabilities found for those. You'll get to see things like which tests they have run. We also integrate with a number of other security tools. So if you have, again, this is kind of that single pane of glass thing. So security people can come in here too. They can upload their network scans for continuous monitoring tools as well. But if we take a look here, let's take a look at a static scan. Again, regardless of where that code is coming from, we can scan it. So let's say, do you guys remember when Struts was implicated a couple of 4 months ago? So, we do open source component analysis with Fortify on Demand as well, and this is included with your subscriptions. So it's going to take a thumbprint of all those. It's going to display them for you in one place. So if you get a call, especially the security team, if they get a call, at 4 in the morning saying, I need a list of all of my apps that have struts, we can see that. We can see a list as well as the releases all in one place. Pretty useful there. Now, the code that we scan, so if this is your own code or if you have the source code to scan. We'll show you a number of different metrics here that they can go and see, things like which vulnerabilities are most common across the app or even across your whole portfolio. We'll see things like trending, the open source piece I just showed, and then things like the smart fix button. So what this does is this shows you depending on which category you're looking at. So this is cross-site scripting reflected vulnerabilities, of which we found 30 of them. This is going to show you node execution order across those issues for those nodes. So if we were to select any of these, each one of these is a cross-site scripting reflected vulnerability. If we select any of these, it's going to show me how the data flows through there. Hopefully so that we can find choke points, so that if we do fix a couple of these points, we might be able to knock out multiple vulnerabilities at once. We had one customer who had run a scan. Again, when you said sometimes you'll run your first scan, you'll come out with quite a few more than you had hoped. Things like this are really helpful there. It's a good place to start. So we had one, they had run their scan. Every 4 lines of code, they had a critical vulnerability on average. They were able to use this to cut back on, I think, like 400, 500 right off the bat. So they can prune that down, and then they can see, like, look at all of these issues that are flowing through these two, line 14. So this is a good place to start for remediation. Now, if you want more details on those, we can certainly see that as well. So for example, the SQL injection here. We'll give you, again, a summary of what that is, because depending on who's reading it, they might not know what that vulnerability is. We'll go through an explanation of why that was flagged. So they'll give you, if this is a source scan, they'll give you the source in the sink there, so where it entered, where it was executed. They'll give you things like examples of that. As well as at the bottom here, we'll map that to your various compliances. So GDPR, for example. Now, under recommendations, we're going to give you guys kind of how we think is the best way to fix this. So in the case of a SQL injection, it's fairly simple. They want to parameterize their queries. We'll give them some examples of how to do so down here. As well as with Fortify on Demand, we do partner with Secure Code Warrior, so they can click this here. They'll be able to, it will open a new window. It's a little slow. So it should remember what I picked last time, but we can go in and change, yeah, see. We can go in and change our language in our framework. So if we're working on Scala, for example, we'll be able to watch a video on, what that vulnerability is. Same kind of information that we provide, but if you're more visual or you just don't want to read, you can watch it. It happens. They can watch a video. It's going to go through the same information. And then they can actually, this is a gamified way to play with it. It uses Secure Code Warrior's dummy code to really kind of give them a hands-on approach here. So they play like a counter hacker, and you're trying to fix the SQL. Is this a SQL injection? I don't remember what I picked. But they're trying to fix this. They're trying to remediate this before the attackers can hack them. So it gives you tips, it gives you tricks so that you can, learn how to remediate it, and then you can go back and do it on your own code. And this is included as well with Fortify on Demand. Let's see here. Do you have a question?
Yeah, what's the connection between the Secure Code Warrior and your app?
And my app or our apps?
The Fortify.
Yes. So currently it's just through Fortify on Demand. They do have plugins, I think, on the next release for the on-premise solution as well. It comes with Fortify on Demand. The on-premise solution, you'd have to have a separate subscription for it.
So it's part of your solution. It's not another website in the market.
It's only attached.
It is. It's third party. So yes, we have integration. But we have a partnership with Fortify on Demand where it's included with your subscription.
Awesome.
But again, for the on-premise solution, it would be different. And then they're trying to work that into the IDEs as well. That's on the roadmap. I'm not quite sure when that'll be released, though. Let's see. You also get the code. Again, if you did a source scan, you'll get the lines of code. So I forget what the lines were, but they'll highlight those for your developers so they can go in and point the location there. We'll also give you things like analysis trace diagrams, so you can kind of follow along from where it was tainted, the source kind of in this greenish color, where it was tainted down to the sink as well. And then as far as like workflow management. You can submit these to your bug tracker. You can submit this to Octane. Again, we do have closed loop bug management as well. So let's see here. Let's switch to Jira. You would just enable that, and then it would reflect in Octane as well. Let's not save that though, because I don't want to mess that up. All right. Any questions on the static piece? Otherwise, I'll jump into a quick dynamic scan of Blackbox Pro. So dynamic scanning through through the portal if you're using Fortify on Demand. This is a slightly different style of testing. Usually, again, this is done a little bit later in the pipeline. Might not necessarily be the developers looking at this. It could be, doesn't have to be. It could be QA, could be the security team. It just kind of varies depending on the organization. But the point here is that we can do this through Fortify on Demand. We can do externally facing sites. We can also do internally facing sites. These could be authenticated. These could be unauthenticated. We can do things like multi-factor authentication, VPN, you name it. As long as we get the information, we can fully crawl that as well as assess those vulnerabilities. Again, with automation, we can have these set up to recur however often you guys would like. But it looks fairly similar as far as the results. Obviously, they're going to be different. It's a different style of test, but they try to keep the same general flow here so that when you're looking at it, you're not going to be confused. So we'll do the same thing with the explanation here. So this is a cross-site scripting attack. They're going to explain why that's important as well as what it is. Same kind of mappings as before. We'll also give you recommendations. Again, this is where it kind of differs. You could have developers involved with this, but again, if it's something like a commercial off-the-shelf app and you don't have access to the code, the developer information is not going to do you a whole lot of good. So we also give recommendations for your security team or for your QA team as well for most of these vulnerabilities, so you guys can do something about fixing it. And then finally, you can also send this to that application defender, the RAS piece, to protect these in real time as well for certain vulnerabilities. Same kind of training with Secure Code Warrior and then references as well. We also provide everything you would need in order to recreate this. This is more on the security side, but we'll provide the request that was sent out as well as the response that was sent, so you can recreate that, the parameters and headers and parameters as well there for recreation.
So does this just do like code security, or is it also looking at like network security?
There's a little bit of both. It's primarily focused on code though, but we do a little bit of both. It does checks. So that's kind of Fortify on Demand in a nutshell. There's quite a bit of extra stuff in there, and I'm happy to go over it with whoever would like more information. It's pretty intuitive, and it's also pretty robust. There's quite a bit you can do with it out of the box, or even additional after that as well. Things like open API support, so you can look into pretty much anything you're using. Any questions on this piece? I think that was all I had for you guys today, other than Q&A. Yes. So any other overall questions about AppSec or anything I covered, anything? Okay.
Awesome. Well, we've got a happy hour planned for after the event for anybody who wants to stick behind and have a drink and have a roundtable conversations about anything we talked about today or anything that's on your mind. We've got these surveys, and these surveys are very helpful for me, but also for Vivit and also for MicroFocus as well. So if you could fill them out, that would be a tremendous help to me. And yeah, thanks for showing up. I really appreciate it. This is a great turnout. Carrie's taking pictures.
Yeah, nobody minds, right? I'm just gonna get a group shot of everybody there. Is that okay?
And validation's down at the desk on the way out.
Yes. This person did this awfully short. All right, awesome. Thanks, guys.